Summary of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki. Introduction. There is a fundamental problem in our society regarding money. Most people spend their lives in a state of financial struggle, working harder and harder, but never getting ahead. This problem, Robert Kiyosaki argues, stems from the fact that we learn about money from our parents and our schools, both of which teach us an outdated and dangerous philosophy. This is the philosophy of the poor dad. Go to school, get good grades, get a safe, secure job, and work for money. This path, Kiyosaki warns, is a trap. It leads directly into what he calls the rat race, a never-ending cycle of working to pay bills, fueled by the two primary emotions that control a person's life: fear and greed. We fear not having enough money, so we work. We get a paycheck, and greed or desire makes us want to buy things. This leads to bigger expenses, which forces us to work even harder, trapping us in a cycle of dependency. Kiyosaki's central thesis, learned from his rich dad, is that this entire mindset is wrong. The wealthy do not follow this path. His rich dad's philosophy was simple. The rich don't work for money. They have money work for them. Kiyosaki asserts that financial freedom is not achieved through a high salary, but through financial literacy, understanding the rules of money that the poor and middle class do not. The key is to break out of the rat race by acquiring assets, not liabilities, and we will explore his findings through the course of this summary. Chapter 1. Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. This is the foundational lesson that changes the entire paradigm of wealth. Kiyosaki illustrates this through the first lesson his rich dad ever taught him. At 9 years old, Robert and his best friend Mike, rich dad's son, wanted to learn how to get rich. Robert's poor dad, his highly educated biological father, told him to simply make money. This led to a failed attempt to counterfeit nickels by melting down lead toothpaste tubes. When they asked Rich Dad how to get rich, he offered to teach them, but not in a classroom. He offered them a job, working in one of his convenience stores for 3 hours every Saturday for 10 cents an hour. Robert and Mike eagerly accepted. But after 3 weeks, Robert was ready to quit. He was being paid almost nothing and hadn't learned a thing. He went to complain to Rich Dad, who had been expecting him. Rich Dad explained the first trap. Most people spend their lives waiting for a paycheck. They complain about low pay, but they are too afraid to quit and look for something new. They have allowed the fear of not paying their bills to control them. Then, Rich Dad offered Robert a raise to 25 cents an hour. Robert was tempted, but Rich Dad was illustrating the second trap: greed. He explained that once the fear is quieted, the desire for more money, for raises, for nicer things, takes over. This combination of fear and greed is the engine of the rat race. Then, Rich Dad made a new offer. The real lesson: he would teach Robert and Mike, but they had to work for zero pay. Against all conventional logic, the boys agreed. By working for free, their minds were forced to break out of the work for a paycheck trap. They were no longer focused on the small wage. Their minds opened up to see the opportunities around them. Weeks later, the opportunity appeared. Robert and Mike noticed the store manager cutting the front covers off unsold comic books and throwing the rest away. They asked if they could have the discarded comics. The manager agreed. They took these worthless comics, which they got for free, and opened a comic book library in Mike's basement. They hired Mike's younger sister to be the librarian, paying her $1 a week. They charged other neighborhood kids 10 cents admission, and their customers could read as many comics as they wanted in 2 hours. Their new business was generating $9.50 per week, and they were paying their employee while not even needing to be physically present. They had learned lesson 1. They were no longer working for money. They had created a system where money was working for them. Chapter 2. Lesson 2. Why teach financial literacy? This is the single most important chapter in the book. Kiyosaki states that if you want to be rich, you must know the difference between an asset and a liability and buy assets. He argues that the primary reason the rich get richer and the poor and middle class struggle is that they do not understand this fundamental difference. Rich Dad's definitions are profoundly simple. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. Financial literacy is the ability to read the story that numbers tell. Kiyosaki illustrates this by showing the cash flow patterns of the 3 groups. The cash flow pattern of a poor person is simple. They get income from a job, and that income immediately goes out to pay for expenses like taxes, rent, food, and transportation. There is nothing left. The cash flow pattern of a middle-class person is a trap. They get a higher income salary from their job, but as their income increases, so do their expenses. They use their income to buy liabilities that they think are assets. They buy a bigger house, a nicer car, and go on vacations, all financed by credit card debt and a mortgage. This leads to the book's most controversial claim. Your house is not an asset. It is a liability. It does not put money in your pocket. It takes money out of your pocket every month in the form of a mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. The cash flow pattern of a rich person is the opposite. They focus their lives on buying and building assets. Their assets, such as stocks, bonds, income-generating real estate, or intellectual property, create a steady stream of passive income. This income then pays for their expenses. Here is the key. The middle class buys luxuries first, on credit, creating debt. The rich buy luxuries last, using the income generated from their assets. The middle class works for their employer and the bank. The rich have their assets working for them. Chapter 3. Lesson 3. Mind your own business. This lesson clarifies the difference between your profession and your business. Kiyosaki explains that most people confuse the two. Your profession is what you do 8 hours a day to pay the bills. If you are a banker, a doctor, or a teacher, that is your profession. Your business, however, is your asset column. Rich Dad taught him that to become financially free, you must mind your own business. This does not mean you have to quit your job. It means that while you are working your profession, you must be spending your free time and your disposable income on buying or creating assets. Do not spend your life focused on your income statement. Focus on your balance sheet. Mind your business, which is your asset column. Kiyosaki uses the famous story of Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's. When Kroc would speak at business schools, he would ask the students, "What business am I in?" The students would laugh and say, "You're in the hamburger business." Kroc would reply, "No, I am not in the hamburger business. My business is real estate." His profession was selling hamburger franchises, but his business, his asset column, was acquiring the land under those franchises. That is where he built his true wealth. Kiyosaki says, the assets you should acquire are the ones you genuinely love. If you don't love real estate, don't invest in it. If you love stocks, study and buy stocks. If you love music, buy music royalties. When you acquire assets you are passionate about, you will enjoy learning about them and be a better, more patient investor. Chapter 4. Lesson 4. the history of taxes, and the power of corporations. This lesson is about understanding the rules of the game of money. The rich, Kiyosaki argues, use their financial intelligence to legally outsmart the system. He explains the myth of tax the rich. Originally, in England and the United States, there were no taxes. Taxes were first implemented to pay for wars and were levied only against the rich. The poor and middle class were told that taxes were created to punish the rich. But the government's appetite for money grew, and soon the tax burden was passed down to the very people who had voted for it, the poor and middle class. The rich, however, were financially smart. They found a way to escape. They used the legal structure of the corporation. Kiyosaki explains the one massive difference in how the rich and the middle class are taxed. An employee who works for a company follows this pattern. Earn, pay taxes, spend what is left. A corporation, which the rich own, follows this pattern. Earn, spend, pay taxes on what is left. This is a complete reversal. By using a corporation, the rich are able to use their pre-tax income to pay for their expenses, their cars, their travel, their dinners, their health as legitimate business expenses. They pay taxes on whatever is left over after they have spent. The employee is taxed before they get a single dollar to spend. This, Kiyosaki states, is the single greatest legal secret of the wealthy. Chapter 5. Lesson 5. The rich invent money. This lesson is about financial intelligence. Kiyosaki states that often in the real world, it's not the smart who get ahead, but the bold. The rich are not afraid to take calculated risks because they understand that their mind is their single most powerful asset. While the poor and middle class are taught to play it safe, the rich are trained to see opportunities that others miss. Kiyosaki explains that luck is created just as money is. Financial intelligence is the ability to create your own luck. It's about being bold, thinking creatively, and solving problems. He uses the story of the Alamo. When Texans are in a tough spot, they don't cower. They shout, "Remember the Alamo." They took a massive military defeat, a failure, and turned it into a financial win. It became a rallying cry that gave them the strength to eventually win their independence, which led to immense wealth. Rich Dad taught Robert that failure is part of the game. The rich are not afraid to lose. They understand that every failure is an opportunity to learn. The poor and middle class are so terrified of losing that they never take the risks required to win. The rich know that failure will only make them smarter and stronger. Chapter 6. Lesson 6. Work to learn. Don't work for money. This final lesson is a direct challenge to the poor dad mindset of job security. Poor Dad was a specialist. Rich Dad, by contrast, advised Robert, "You want to know a little about a lot." This chapter is about acquiring critical skills, not just a paycheck. Kiyosaki tells his own story. After leaving the military, where he learned leadership, he joined Xerox. He did not join because he loved copiers. He joined to conquer his greatest fear, rejection. He forced himself to learn sales, a skill he knew was essential for any business owner. He explains that most people are one skill away from great wealth. They are great at their profession, but they don't understand sales, marketing, accounting, or leadership. They specialize, which makes them valuable as employees, but vulnerable in their careers. This lesson is best summarized by the cash flow quadrant. This is a diagram that divides all working people into 4 groups. E stands for employee. You have a job, you value security, you trade your time for a paycheck. S stands for self-employed or specialist. You own a job. You are a doctor, a lawyer, or a consultant. You are a perfectionist. And if you stop working, your income stops. B stands for business owner. You own a system, and people work for you. You can leave your business for a year, and it will still run and generate profit without you. I stands for investor. Money works for you. Your wealth generates more wealth. The poor dad path trains you to be an E or an S. The rich dad path teaches you how to become a B and an I. Kiyosaki's final advice is to work to learn the skills that will allow you to move from the left side of the quadrant, E and S, to the right side, B and I. That is the definitive path to financial freedom. Final summary. Rich dad, poor dad is a fundamental rejection of the rat race and the conventional wisdom that a safe job equals security. Its core philosophy is that true financial freedom is not about your paycheck, but about your mindset. You have the personal power to take control of your financial education. You have the self-determination to learn the difference between an asset and a liability, and to choose, day by day, to build your asset column. Financial literacy is the key to making your money work for you, rather than spending your life working for it.
Thanks for listening. If you found this summary valuable, please like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts. To support the channel, all links are in the description.